very much, Ian. Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to thank Semex, especially Mike Dennison, for inviting me to talk to you this afternoon. I'm sure you all agree there's been some excellent speakers so far and provided quite a lot of some food for thought. I tried not to use too much Cumbrian dialect or terminology through this next half hour, but I can see looking around the room there's a lot of happy, smiley Cumbrians who's quite happy to translate if I come across any words you don't quite understand. In the next half hour I would like to talk a little about the history behind Wormanby Holsteins, how we've got to where we are today, then look at the day-to-day running of the farm, followed by a little bit about my particular interest in showing and judging of Holstein cows. Then finally talking briefly about what I hope the future holds for the Wormanby herd. My dad and mum took over a three-generation tenancy of the 190-acre Wormanby farm on the Solway coast in 1971. It was situated just 5 miles west of Carlisle. This was part of a family partnership at the time with my grandfather and my uncle John, who farmed at Holmes Mill under the Home Eden prefix. My grandfather was a first-generation farmer, having started out as a farm labourer in his earlier years, and he attained his first tenancy at Holmes Mill in the early 60s. After my parents married, Wormanby became part of the business, but at that time it was a pretty basic steading, and the landlords helped set up a self-feed silage system with cubicles for 70 cows, with John milking a similar number of cows at Holmes Mill. In the early 80s, a further farm was bought between the partnership in the village of Roughby Sands, which was situated plumb between the two farms. But in 1988, the partnership was dissolved, with Dad and John taking over the running of their respective farms. In 1990, I left school and started working on the farm full-time, having achieved my academic goal of getting a GCSE in woodwork. Plots of land around the farm have been purchased over the years, which eventually resulted in the buying of Wormanby in 2006. Since then, a further 90 acres have been bought, and we're now where we are today with a 360-acre owner-occupied ring-fence setup. Dad had always had a good, keen interest in cows and started on a purely commercial basis with the Frisian herd, although it had always milk recorded. But down to my growing interest in cows, the decision was made to start grading up the herd in 1985. At the time, I managed to wing a day off school when the Holstein Frisian Society field officer, Abby Cotton, came to visit. And not only did we start registering at that time, it's when I first joined HYB, what is now. This was certainly instrumental into me being able to start to compete in linear assessment competitions and stock judgings, and further fuel my enthusiasm for good Holstein cows. In 1992, I was lucky enough to win a trip to the Royal Winter Fair in Toronto, courtesy of Semex, and this trip was very influential as it helped me identify where I wanted to take the herd and what type of cows I would like to breed. Two herds of in particular interest which made a lasting impression at that time were Quality and Du Pasquet. Not only did they have fantastic cows with deep pedigrees, but they also sold the herd as a brand. These cows were kept in tremendous condition all the time, and the steadings were really immaculate. And as soon as you entered the farm, there was just an aura about the place. And this is something definitely I continue to strive for at Wormanby. My goal has always been and remains to be better rather than continues to get bigger. In the early 90s, we started using what I would call more quality Holstein genetics, but it wasn't probably until the mid-90s that we started buying into more noted families, the Gloriettes, Lindas, Judys, Mahalas, Cheries, to name a few, made an early impact within the herd, and are still going strong within the herd today. More recently, we've introduced lines of the Barbie, Delia, Flo, Luster, Melody, Rachel, Red Rose and Twain. All this leads us to where we are today. We're a family partnership involving my parents, myself and my wife Louise, with me focusing more on the day-to-day management of the herd and my dad more on the arable side. My dad has always supported me in where I wanted to take the herd as into where his own interest with Holstein cows. We're currently milking 180 cows in the herd, with 150 on sandbed cubicles and a further 30 on loose housing, with just under 400 head of stock in total. Following the purchase of the farm, we knew that a lot of investment was required into infrastructure to just ensure that it was continued to be viable. And 5 years ago now, we built a new facility for the milking herd, which had previously just been on straw courts and grazed during the summer months. It took over 2 years to be granted planning permission, as one of the toughest challenges of any kind of development we make, as the farm is situated right on top of Hadrian's Wall. And during this 2-year period, it was getting at the various stages where it looked like we weren't even going to get planning permission, which basically it was going to affect anything we did on the farm. So there was quite a bit of consideration whether we had to move and sell up and locate elsewhere, even though we had just purchased the farm in just a few months beforehand. It does remain a significant factor in any long-term developments we want to make. It's something we always have to bear in mind. The new facility has 120 sandbed cubicles on slatted floors with underground storage for 850,000 gallons of slurry. Although we're not currently in an NVZ, it does give us enough storage for around about the 12 months to cover all eventualities. The loose housing is now used for transition cows. Those cows are either too large or those just needing a little bit of TLC. At the moment, we're milking twice a day and have one part-time worker, Ross Pattinson, we found to be really reliable and thorough and just knows his cows and identifies problems very early and then shares his concerns. All this accumulating our current herd average of just over 11,000 kilos a cow at 4.07 fat and 323 protein. Within the herd, we're currently milking about 58 excellent cows, 80 VGs, with the remainder just good plus 2-year-old heifers or not yet scored. Currently, the calving interval stands at 4 or 9 days. That's something we're always looking to improve on. But at the moment, it's around about 1.7 services to conception, which is something we're quite happy with. There are a couple of significant parties who we work closely with to achieve the results that we want. One of these is our vets, Craig Robinson and partners, who do fortnightly routine visits, and hopefully we can address any problems early. We vaccinate the herd against BVD, lepto, IBR, screen for Johne's. Not part of any particular health plan, but we just try to do it to limit as few problems as possible, really. A lot of time and money is put into investing in the genetic of the herd, and we want to keep these cows as healthy as possible, hopefully to help the bottom line. Selling monthly at Border and Lakeland club sales and at H&H auctions over the years has become a significant part of our business. We have recently probably sold quite a lot of stock privately as well, and currently sell between 40 and 50 heifers and young cows a year. This all supplements probably an ever-depleting milk check at the moment and keeps the milking herd at a manageable number while ensuring plenty of heifers come through the system, so we still have plenty to sell and move on. As you see from the photographs here, this is where the current milking herd is housed, both outside and inside. And this is myself, my wife Louise, and my parents at the recent UK Dairy Day at Telford. Moving on to the milking herd, they've fed the same ration throughout their lactation. We found in the past we lost far too much milk when we started playing around, changing groups and altering rations, etc. So we just keep them on an even keel and keep them on the same ration throughout. Cows have been housed all year round since the introduction of the new housing 5 years ago now. And since we started this, the herd average has risen by 1,500 litres a cow, and the calving interval been reduced by 20 days, just by the sheer fact of not leaving anything to chance and having complete control of cows' intakes and rations. The TMR ration itself has been developed by Gareth Brolly, a nutritionist who works for our Calves Agriculture, someone who we've been working together very closely for the last 20 years, and he makes monthly visits, but is always at the end of the phone should things change. He continues to play a very significant part in the herd's development. The current milking cow ration consists of 12 kilos of maize, 2 kilos of urea-treated barley, 6 kilos of the dairy blend, and 30 kilos of grass silage, which all results in a ration of 32 litres plus maintenance, with our current feed rate is sitting at 0.33 per litre. The blend is continuously monitored to supplement the grass and maize silage as best as it can. Truly believe that ration consistency is everything, and very little changes throughout the year. We've strived to be as self-sufficient as possible. So over the years we have invested heavily in land with this in mind, with the only dairy blend and dairy nuts are bought in, with cows topped up in the parlour to a maximum of 3 kilo head, first maybe cows giving up towards 60 kilos. Moving on to sort of dry cows. We just, once again, like the milkers, they just get one ration throughout this dry period, which consists of 5 kilo straw, 7 kilo of the maize silage, 2 kilo of the dairy blend, and the dry cow mineral plus 15 kilos of silage. At the moment, we're operating a 42-day dry day policy. They're currently housed in sand beds up until 10 days off calving, then moved on to straw yards, which will remain on for at least 2 to 3 weeks post calving. Something we have introduced over the last 12 to 18 months is sort of the widespread use of calcium boluses on anything that's had 3 calves or more. Our rationale simply being they're just trying to be ahead of the game, even though sort of milk fever cases were minimal beforehand. And we just find that these cows are now hitting the ground running, trying to eliminate any problems at source. Cows are treated at dry enough with separating tubes and given 2 tray tube boluses and then also a rotovac vaccine. All young stock are reared on the farm. New housing has been built since the purchase of the farm back in 2006. It's simply the older buildings were just not quite, well, just weren't fit for purpose anymore really. Bullion heifers receive 20 kilos of second cut silage with ad lib haylage and also a 2 kilo of rearing cake. They'll be on the same ration until about 4 months into the pregnancy. Then they moved into a different group and on into 20 kilos of second cut silage and then once again ad lib haylage. Then 60 days off calving and then moved on to the sand beds and then received the dry cow ration. Our aim is to calve heifers at 24 months of age, but this is often dependent on size and often feel if they're big enough, they are old enough. But at the moment, we're calving a lot of heifers in at 110, 111, and we're absolutely chuffed to bits with the results, really. Calves are all kept reared in individual pens up to 3 weeks of age. We tube them with colostrum for the first 3 feeds after birth, then moved on to a milk replacement powder. Over the last 12 months, we have used widespread using calf jackets on them, and we just to great effect really. We just find these calves really thrive. From then, they moved into batches of 6. At 3 weeks, they moved into batches of 6 up until about 8 weeks of age, with milk just tipped into a trough. They're generally weaned around about this 8-week period, and then from 8 weeks up until 6 months, then moved into batches of 12 and fed on a straightforward rearing pellet with ad lib straw and haylage. Calves are then introduced to cubicles around about 6 months of age, and then once again on ad lib haylage and then a measured amount of second cut silage. I know what we do is probably not too dissimilar to what the majority of you guys probably do at home. But I always believe it's about having protocols in place and sticking to them even when sometimes things can be challenging. Moving on to my own personal interest in the Holstein cow, which is probably why we went into pedigree breeding in the first place. And my interest probably grew in judging in the early days, probably because our cows weren't of the standard of showing or selling any stock off at the time when we first started to grade up. So I think it was my way of being involved. Things just went on from there. From 1985 at 11-year-old, it was my first year I qualified for the Royal Show, as was, and came 5th in the 11 to 18-year-old classes for judging. Then on, I was very lucky enough to be selected to represent Border and Lakeland at virtually every Royal Show and Winkin Rally right to the age of kicking out at 26. In my final year of HYB, I was also very honoured to be awarded the President's Medal, and something I'm still very proud of. After winning the senior linear assessment and stock judging at the Royal Show for my last 3 years in HYB, I was invited by Hodgson UK to attend their regional judging school, and after 2 years I qualified for the national judging panel. So far I've been very lucky to be asked and honoured to be asked to judge many regional shows, calf club show eliminators, club herd competitions, and by Hodgson UK in 2013 was asked to judge the North West Regional Final for the Premier Herd competition. But By far my biggest honour today was last year was once again being asked by Hodgson UK to judge the 2015 All Britain Calf Show, which I found to be an amazing experience with amazing quality of stock throughout. I think the final 6 in the championship last pull was something I think as a nation we can be tremendously proud of, that we're breeding stock of this quality. I think we've always sort of knocked ourselves down over the years, and I think we're fit to compete with anybody with the level of stock we have in this country. There you go. We were very fortunate to make it to the finals of the Hodgson UK Premier Herd competition in 2002 and again in 2014. And almost 30 years to the day of the visit from Abbey Cotton, the HFS field officer, we won the National Herd competition in 2015. As you can see here is a picture of the presentation awards ceremony down at Telford last September. As you can see, with Dad at that time, what can be described as an acute case of staggers. He had to be pushed into a darkened room and calmed down for a few hours, really. So I think it was a bit too much for him, so bless him. Our farm achievements to date, in 2009 we were awarded Master Breeder status, something we're very proud of. And in 2012 we entered the RABDF Gold Cup for the first time and were thrilled to be announced as runners-up. This represented a completely different angle to the farm, as it just wasn't about the cows, but it was about the business as a whole, which is really what ultimately matters. We entered again in 2013 and we're delighted to be named in the final 6. 2014 also saw 3 All Britain nominations for 3 homebred cows, with Wormanby Atwood Linda being awarded honourable mention as a senior 2-year-old. The Border and Lakeland Holstein Club decided to enter a team into the first dairy day down at Telford, and this format enabled us to be part of a team which worked together to get our cows seen at probably the biggest showcase in the UK. Committing to big shows is not easy. It can be a lot of hard work, time consuming, and you still need to keep the farm running smoothly at home. But the club achieved great success, and in our first show our 3 cows down there stood 2nd, 3rd and 4th in their respective classes. It was great to see the club have another great show again this year and sharing each other's successes, with again Wormanby Atwood Linda, our highest placed cow, sitting 3rd in probably one of the strongest classes ever seen in this country in the senior 3-year-olds. Performing well at a national level is something I enjoy and certainly very proud of. It's also a great release from the day-to-day grind and gives you an opportunity to get out the farm gate and mix with other people who have the same interests as myself. I also have cousins who work within the industry in a variety of positions, and we've always shared a keen interest in the preparation and showing of cattle. And at these events I work very closely with 2 cousins, Richard Hodgson and Andrew Holliday, who are both very experienced and have helped present my cows to their very best. Although you can always tell at the last minute which personally they think are going to be more successful, because there's often a bit of a jostle to who gets on the halter. But ultimately, all this work and effort has to filter through the rest of the business to justify all the time and expense that it demands, and I truly believe that this does happen. Right, linked to this is the growth of social media and ensuring our farm is seen as a brand. This is something we're trying to embrace through the likes of Facebook and our website and farm logo. Our website has been up and running for a number of years now, but the rise of Facebook has changed the purpose of this and role, and which means we have recently readapted it and relaunched it so it encompasses Wormanby as this brand. The internet and social media means that we can not only promote our herd locally, but hopefully nationally and internationally. I'm sure a lot of people over the years have questioned the relevance and benefits to a farm of judging and showing. You know, it may be very time-consuming and expensive, but showing is a fantastic shop window for the herd, and regardless of the pedigree side, and I think from a purely commercial angle, being able to judge and assess cows can only help the development of your herd, as every breeding decision we make is about hopefully making an improvement on generation, and being able to assess the cow's strengths and weaknesses is surely what judging is all about. Showing nationally has only really started over the last few years, probably prompted by the start of the UK Dairy Expo by H&H at Carlisle, and an event that seems to be growing from strength to strength year on year. However, we had sort of shown locally over the years at local shows like the Cumberland County and at Northern Expo. We've always been active members of the Border Lakeland Club show, Border Lakeland Holstein Club, and supporting herd competitions has always proven to be a sort of handful yardstick to where we are. We're lucky enough to be part of a club which has some very strong competition, which has always kept you on your toes. We move on to sort of pictures of sort of 3 cows that we achieved All Britain nominations with last year. This is Wormanby Bottle Mahala. She was nominated in a 4-year-old class. She was after being placed second at the UK Dairy Expo at Carlisle. She's, it says, 94.4th calf cow. It traces back to Dorigo Integrity Mahala. Mahalas are probably our most numerically biggest family and probably our most consistent family within the herd. I think we have about 12 milking and there's about 25 head of young stock. They're just really sort of real heifer breeding family as well. They're so terribly consistent. They're not the biggest cows, but always tend to be very balanced, square runs with absolutely phenomenal udders, regardless which bull we use on them. This cow was sired by a stock bull we had. He was a Shottle son out of Breguin from Vince Ronda, and he's probably proven to be one of the best bulls we've ever used, to be honest. Out of the first 8 what calved in his 3rd calvers, 7 of them are now excellent. There's sort of 3 93s and a couple of 92s in there, so they're not just scraping in. No, we have progeny off this cow by Artes Atwood, and there's a Larkus contrast heifer calf this time. Moving on to Wormanby Aftershock Gloriette. She got an All Britain nomination after being second at Carlisle at the UK Dairy Expo, then again second in the class down at Telford. She's obviously an Aftershock, 92.3rd calf cow out of a 94-point Lucky Goldwyn autopilot. And she traces back to her original Gloriette purchase, which was an inspiration of the Donovan Sheep Gloriette, which we purchased at Haley's farm sale. And that cow was carrying twin heifer calves by Chesapeake at the time, and she was just basically the family's goods gone on from there. Finally, we're moving on to Wormanby at Woodlinda. She's an 89-point calf cow. This is my current favourite within the herd today. She's a cow I think has a big future ahead of her. She's obviously she's an Atwood, often an excellent 94-point shuttle. And when she calved down as a heifer, we had sort of great expectations for this cow. We thought this is a cow that was going to take some beating, but I'm sure Richard Bowen and David Wright were thinking exactly the same when they were calving down Goldwyn Squaw and Seaverell at the same time. But a bit of friendly competition never did anyone any harm. Moving on to the future, I think I couldn't really stand up on the stage today and not really mention the current milk price situation. It continues to be of great concern. As not only has it started to become a concern regarding future investment, but it's now playing an integral part of the day-to-day running of the farmers. It's just boiling down to a cash flow issue. As most producers are aware, on the world market, you're going to have to accept that there's going to be good times and bad. But after 18 months of depressed prices, it's now even testing the even most optimistic of farmers. After a lot of talk on all sides, whether it be retailers, processors or producers, there still doesn't really seem to be any real definitive steps forward as regarding a clear price structure or what's going to happen. To me and to many other producers, this is now very frustrating. At the end of the day, all we ask for, whether it be a perception or whether it be true or not, is to be getting a fair deal. And my personal opinion is why can't there be legislation in this country like there is in other EU countries about selling produce below the cost of production? Because at the end of the day, who do these low prices benefit? During times like this, it's easy not just to look too far ahead into the future, but I feel you still need to be planning and looking to where your business can improve and go next. Being ready for when the tide turns and ensure you can react if and when things do look up is something that I feel is essential. For us, it will probably be an investment in a new parlour, although it may be a substantial investment as a dairy farm. It's time to ensure that your bread and butter is allowing us to maximise production and be as productive as possible. Our parlour currently has its limitations, and we feel that it's time we have to move forward. A large investment like this has to work for you, and we probably need to consider going on to 3 times a day to maximise our cow's potential and to justify this investment. In the immediate future, we have an open day in August time. We're also sort of planning to have a small sale at the same time, as been part of the current winners of the National Herd Competition. Something that's going to involve a lot of work, but hopefully a lot of you guys can make it and have a look around it for yourselves. As far as breeding goes, I'm always looking to improve the herd, whether we buy into cow families through embryos or continue to the use of the best bulls available. I'm a firm believer in the use of genomics, which are approximately 80% of the bulls we've used over the last 5 years are genomically tested, and we're now milking the daughters to great effect. Winning the herd competition this year has fulfilled one of my main ambitions as a breeder, but the icing on the cake would be certainly have to be not standing second or third at a national show and standing in the top spot. However, it took 30 years to win the herd competition, so I don't really hold my breath. That's all from me. I'm sure you've managed to find the bits you managed to find the bits you stayed awake and interesting. And would once again like to thank Semex for asking me to talk to you today. Right, thank you.